Mathcast number 2, Intended Audience, Grade 6, created by Rebecca Hunt. Before we begin, we're going to look at some vocabulary. Our first word is area, and this is a measure of how much two-dimensional space a shape takes up. And we're going to be looking at the area of right triangles. And these are triangles that have one right angle. And here's an example right here, and here's its 90-degree angle. First, we're going to start off with a little review. The problem says find the area. And before we begin to find the area of this right triangle, we need to identify the height and the base. So here you can see we have the base right here and the height right here. And these easily could have been switched because of the commutative property of multiplication. And you already know the area formula for a right triangle, so all we have to do is plug this base and this height into the formula. So we get A equals 1/2 15 feet times 8 feet to get a total of 60 squared feet. Don't forget your units. This is a squared problem because we multiplied feet times feet. So how do we know the area of a right triangle is correct? Well, first, let's take a look at a rectangle. This is our rectangle here, and as you know, the area of a rectangle is A equals base times height. So we have base here and height here. What happens if we cut this rectangle in half? You can see we then have two right triangles because both of these angles are 90 degrees. We also know, because we cut this rectangle in half, that each one of these is 1/2 the area of the whole rectangle. So how would we find the area of this shaded triangle? We would cut the area of the whole rectangle in half because we're only finding 1/2 of the area. So this is what the area of a right triangle is. Or you may see it as A equals BH over 2. They're the same thing. So let's look at this problem here. It says Mr. Jones told his students they each need 1/2 of a piece of paper. Calvin cut his piece of paper horizontally and Matthew cut his piece of paper diagonally. Which student has the larger area on their half piece of paper? Explain. Take a moment to pause the video and talk about it in your groups. Did you get the same answer? Let's take a look at why the answer is neither. So if we shade in half of each rectangle, we can see that they are just that, half. Both are half the area of the rectangle. So if this is half the area of the rectangle and this is half the area of the rectangle, that means they're equal. So neither student has the larger area on their half piece of paper. Okay, here's our last problem. It says Dan and Joe are responsible for cutting the grass on the local high school soccer field. Joe cuts a diagonal line through the field as shown in the diagram below and says that each person is responsible for cutting the grass on one side of the line. Dan says that this is not fair because he will have to cut more grass than Joe. Is Dan correct? Why or why not? Let's think back to what we've learned so far. We know that when you divide a rectangle in half, each right triangle is half of the area. So we know that this side is 1/2 the area, and this side is 1/2 the area. So if they are both half the area, that means they're equal. So no, Dan is not correct. As we learned before, right triangles are half the area of a rectangle. That means both Dan and Joe have half of the soccer field to cut. Neither one has more grass to cut than the other. Let's do a little recap. How are the formulas of rectangles and right triangles related? So think back to our previous problems. If you only had the formula of a rectangle, how would you find the right triangle formula? You would cut the area of a rectangle in half. So when the base and height are the same for both the right triangle and the rectangle, the area of the right triangle is half of the area of the rectangle. So the area of a right triangle is 1/2 times base times height, and the area of a rectangle is base times height. Thanks for watching!